Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video. It is going to be my March palette stash video where I'm going to be sharing with you all of the palettes that I have shopped my palette stash for that I want to try and get at least one use out of in the month of March. I've been trying to find creative ways to cycle through my palette collection. I have tons of palette content that I have recently posted, so I'll leave my palette playlist linked down below. I do also do a monthly like palette recap from the previous month where I share with you all of the palettes that I used that month, how many times I used the palette, etc, etc. But I started this palette stash series for February, so I will quickly go through all of the palettes that I used in February with you guys, let you know if I had a favorite palette from the month, etc. Obviously for February we were heavily focused on pinks, and I have a couple of looks that I really enjoyed doing. I didn't take a ton of pictures of looks that I had like created throughout the month, and I'll try and be better about that throughout the month of March, but I am really excited to put the pinks down for a little bit and jump over to some greens for the month of March. So if you're interested in seeing the palettes that I have pulled from my collection that I want to try and at least get a little bit of use out of in the month of March, if you want some inspiration on palettes maybe you have in your collection you could pull out for March, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I would love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's get into talking some palettes. I was not planning to film tonight. I just was literally sitting down and I wanted to get, so I have my Sugar Pill Fun Size palette is in my whole collection project pan, and I needed to get use out of the shadows that are currently on my eyes. So I was like, just gonna sit down, chill, and have fun creating a look. And I honestly had so much fun creating this that I felt like I couldn't let it go to waste and not film. So it's like 9 o'clock at night and here we are. I thought this would be a good one to film tonight. As always, I would love your guys' feedback on any palettes that you plan to pull out to use in March. And I also want your feedback on next month, April. What palettes should I start to think about pulling out for the month of April? If you have color suggestions, if there's palettes that you want to see me pull out, let a girl know. I'm quickly just going to start with these singles. So I also do a section where I will physically choose singles with you guys at the end, but these were the singles that I had chosen for the month of February, and I actually reached for every single shade in this palette except for this green shade right here, which was depotted from my Alamar Cosmetics palette. So I'm gonna leave this green one in. I feel like this will be very fitting for the month of March. And I did get some use out of all of my other singles that I had selected. I have decided I am going to declutter this single right here. This is a shade from the ColourPop Perception palette. I took out all the shades that I wanted to keep, and I use this in a shadow look. I use this in an eye look, and I enjoy the shade. The quality is fine. It's just not a shade I see myself needing in my collection. Like, I only added it to the look to get use out of the shadow, not because I was like craving this specific shade. So I'm going to declutter that one, but all the other shades I will end up keeping. I actually have this one popped onto the center. It's my favorite single shadow from the month. It is the shade Opal, and it's from JD Glow Cosmetics. JD Glow has some of my favorite singles just because I feel like they have such unique shifts to them. So there is Opal right there. It's so beautiful, and I used this quite a few times this month. I actually also just wanted to quickly shout out these two. I think both are from Terra Moon. I also really enjoyed this one. This one is in the shade Andromeda. Spelling vocabulary were never my thing. There's that one right there. I love these Terra Moon shadows as well. They have such fun shifts to them as well. And then I have the shade Atlas, which is also on the inner portion of my eyes today, and it's a really beautiful like shifty blue shade. So there is Atlas right there. I also had a couple of Aether Beauty singles and just some other randoms, but I will be selecting new singles to focus on for March. And I actually really enjoyed doing this because normally I am someone who neglects her single shadow collection, but having it in this little Z palette that's like at the forefront of my mind has also encouraged me. Like today when I was creating this look, I went into my Z palette to just kind of peruse through and see other like potential single shadows I could have added to this look, and I already feel like I've gotten more use out of my single shadow collection than I did last year just by doing this. So I'm very excited to shop through my singles and pick some other single shadows to focus on for March with you guys at the end of the video. So I don't necessarily know if I want to like re-go through every single palette that I pulled for February, because I feel like we could end up getting like, this could end up getting a little bit too long, but I will just briefly share like my most reached for palettes of the month of February. And they were definitely the Rowan 1111 quad, or at least most reached for that were pulled for my February palette stash video. So I reached into this shade quite a bit this past month. And I forgot how much I enjoy, I don't know, that did not swatch well, but this is actually a really beautiful shade. I forgot how much I enjoyed the Rowan quads, and I really love just the color story of the 1111. And then I also have the Natasha Denona Mini Love palette, and I have used this quite a bit as well. I've been focused on this shade right here, trying to hit pan on it, and I'm hopeful that I'll still hit pan on this, like very shortly. Like we've got to just be like probably a use or two away. And this is one I can get away with neutral looks as well as pink looks. Like I said, I'm kind of over the pink looks. We did a ton of pink in the month of February, obviously. But I really am so close to pan on this. I would like to hit pan on this before officially putting this away. And then the palette that I created my favorite look with, I was actually really surprised because when I pulled this in, I was kind of thinking about potentially decluttering this palette just because I don't get a ton of use out of it. It's the Juvia's The Sweet Pinks, and I recently did a very neon look, and I used these two shades as well as the shade right here, paired with a couple other palettes. But it was such a fun look, not one that I thought was going to turn out when I was creating it, but you guys gave some really nice feedback about it as well in the video I posted, which was my most used eyeshadow palettes from 2021. This is definitely a palette I want to keep around. I don't foresee myself using it in the near future just because I'm pinked out, but I really enjoyed having that pulled. The only palette that I did not end up reaching for was the Norvina palette, so I'm gonna put this away. It's not one that I'm gonna like roll over into March just because I don't feel like this fits my March aesthetic, but I did not end up reaching into the Norvina palette as well. Everything else that was pulled for the February Shop My Stash, I did end up reaching for. That being said, I have a stack of 12 new palettes that I have already pulled out for the month of March. The requests that I was seeing from last month's video for this month were some yellows, and I think I might try and focus on the yellow shadows in my singles. And then I also got a request to pull out my Natasha Denona Mini Gold palette, so I am going to be pulling this one out. This I think will be such a fun one for the St. Patrick's Day month. These two metallic shades are going to be probably the shades that I end up reaching for. This isn't my favorite Natasha Denona Mini, but I also do really like this shade right here as just like a one shadow and done. So I'm excited to get some use out of this one. And then obviously I just saw a ton of requests for greens for the month of March. So you'll notice as we go through these palettes that it's heavily focused on green. So I grabbed my ColourPop Mandalorian palette. Obviously a very green palette, but then it has my row of neutrals if I want the neutrals. So I'm hoping to create maybe a couple looks out of this one. And then I also grabbed the ColourPop Lush Life palette. I really enjoyed this palette, and I really want to get some use out of this like electric lime green shade. But again, there's some neutrals in this as well if I'm looking for a more everyday sort of look. Maybe I'll create something deep with this palette as well. We'll just have to see. I also grabbed my ABH Jackie palette. When I was filming my most used palettes of 2021, I was like, oof, I really want, like, this is giving me March vibes right here. I've got my neutrals and my greens. Seems to be a pattern. I probably could have pulled this for the pinks and Valentine's Day as well, but we're pulling this one out for this month. I would like to see myself get like at least 5 uses from this palette. I also decided to pull my KKW Camo palette. Now this wasn't the most impressive palette in my opinion, but it gives me the right vibe for March, and I'm gonna give it a second chance. Maybe maybe I'll just have a better experience with this, using it this month. I'm really not sure. Maybe I won't at all. I can't see myself decluttering this palette for the sheer fact that camo print is like my favorite thing ever. But in terms of quality, this wasn't my favorite when I tried this out. I also grabbed for the Sigma Untamed palette because, again, it has some greens and then also just still has like those deeper tones that I feel like are still appropriate for this time of year. When we hit April, I feel like we're gonna, or I personally am gonna be more interested in like pastels and lighter airy sort of shades, but as of right now I want to still, you know, maybe focus on something like a little bit deeper. So I thought this would be a good one to pull. I mean, all the greens and like the greeny golds, like the Dirty Money, like the leprechaun-y sort of greeny golds. Like, yes, this is the Melt Smoke Sessions if you were not aware. Okay, I was going to pull my Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction palette because it has that green shade that I love, and I was like, ooh, like I could see myself definitely wanting to reach into that shade this month. But then I accidentally grabbed this palette first, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll pull this palette because I'm already thinking of Bronze Seduction. I could see myself just reaching for that on my own, whereas I may not necessarily have reached for this one on its own. I forget which number this one is, and for some reason it just says Mothership on the back. It doesn't say anything else. I would like to create a look with this green shade, also dig into like this gold shade, and then I for some reason am really drawn to this shade right here as well, even though I just said I wasn't going to be doing much with pinks. Although I don't even know what kind of formula that is. This could be like a good just pop this on my eyelid and just call it a one shadow and done sort of day. I'm hoping to get, my goal with this palette, hopefully as I'm editing this, I'm writing these goals down and then I can check back in the next month's update. My goal with this one, I think, will be hopefully to reach into this at least 5 times as well, and to create one look that's mostly taken, like where it's most of the look is created from shadows within this palette. Maybe not every single shadow, but the majority of the look is created from inspiration from this palette, if that makes sense. Sometimes I have like 8 palettes open and I'm not drawing inspiration from any palette in particular, and then there's days where I'm like really centered on one palette. Like for example, today I had the Sugar Pill Fun Size, and yes, I pulled for a couple other shades, but my inspiration was drawn from that palette. I want to create at least one inspired look from this Pat palette. Okay, along with the Sigma Untamed, I really wanted to also grab the Sigma Enchanted. I had so much fun with this one in January, and I wanted to pull this one for this green shade. I actually created a look in February with using this palette. I was wearing like a green, I really loved the look. I actually used this and the Pat Bronze Seduction palette. Loved that. Would love to do another green look with this. You kind of have your Dirty Money shade over here. I do want to do a look with the shade Metamorphosis, which is more of like that red brown or red brown blue sort of shade. But yeah, I don't know, I'm just feeling super inspired this year. Like I keep looking to this palette for inspiration, and so I wanted to pull this one out. I have 3 palettes that after filming my most used palettes of 2021, I was like, ooh, I really want to pull this for, I feel like this is just gonna be a good palette for the month of March. One of them being the Urban Decay Stone Vibes palette. This has a couple of green, like fun green shades, so I thought this would be a good one to pull. Also, the Alter Ego Artemis palette. This is very like fall vibes, but also has some greens in it and some brighter like golds that I felt like would be very fitting for the month of March. And still, it kind of goes a little bit deeper, and I feel like it still kind of fits the aesthetic for this season, at least in Minnesota when it's still relatively cold in March. And then also the Odin's-Eye Norns palette. I did order the Angie palette, the Angie collab. I'm so excited for that. But I really would like to hit pan on this shade, and that's kind of why I decided to pull for this one, more so because I want to hit pan on the shade Pink Chameleon, even though I just said I was over pinks. But also there's some greens running throughout this. I thought it might be fun to do a blue or purple look. I obviously have a blue, purple, and green look on my eyes today, and this one's a little bit deeper, so I feel like if I don't use this now, I won't use it for the spring summer months, and then wouldn't pull it back out again until winter unless I was super intentional about it. So I thought that this would be a fun one to pull. And then the 12th and final palette that I have decided to pull for the month of March is the Huda Beauty Wild Python palette. And this just has some fun shades, some fun, just different tones of like greens and blues I thought would be fun for this month as well. So those are the 12 palettes that I have decided to pull out for the month of March. Now we are going to go shop through my single shadows and fill up my 9-pan palette again. All right, you guys, I have all of my singles laid out. I know the lighting might not be the best right now. I know for sure I want to grab this shade right here, which is in the shade Going Bananas. I know I had a request to pull out a yellow, and you don't get much more yellow than that. And yellow is definitely something that is outside of my comfort zone, but I feel like this could be so much fun and so much fun to pair with different like greens and stuff. So I'm gonna pull this. And like I said, the only other shade that I was keeping to roll over was this shade right here, which is from the Alamar Cosmetics palette. I do know that I want to grab, I think for sure, this green matte shade. This is from Shroud Cosmetics and it's in the shade Take a Hint, and I have never used this shade before, but again, I thought it'd be fun to pull a matte green in this shade. I also want to pull this dark green shade. I think this is Harvest? Nope, Hot Spiced Cider from Terra Moon Cosmetics, and this is a deeper, almost like green to browny red sort of duochrome shade. It's really, really beautiful, and I think this one is going to be really easy for me to use because I could definitely pair this with like neutral looks, and it kind of reminds me of the shade Sponsored from the Jackie palette in collaboration with ABH. I think I'm gonna pull this just neutral brown shade. I want to say that I depotted this from the possibly Dream Street palette from ColourPop, either that or the Perception palette, but there is a decent dip going in this, and my goal is to hit quite a few eyeshadow pans this year, and I don't feel like I'm off to the best start the first couple of months. So I'm gonna pull this and see if I can't focus on this and potentially hit a pan here. I'm going to also grab this shade right here. This kind of reminds me of the green. No, it doesn't at all. Wait, no, it doesn't remind me of the green from the Pat McGrath. But dang, is that a really, really beautiful, wow, that is beautiful. So this is Snow Globe from Terra Moon, and it definitely has some green reflect to it. I don't know if it's picking up with the lighting over here, but I'm very excited to get use out of this. I'm also gonna grab this shade right here. This is also from Terra Moon. This is in Meteorite, and this is like a pink to green sort of flip. I don't know how well the flip again is coming across on camera, but dang, that's beautiful. I'm excited to reach for this. Okay, this is what my palette's looking like. I feel like we have room for one more smaller ColourPop shade. Okay, I actually cannot decide what I want to reach for. Maybe, what's this? Okay, this is, I believe, the shade Kaleidoscope, which was like one of my favorite shades from the Dream Street palette. I don't feel like this is swatching the best, but I have a decent dip going in this. And I feel like I've wanted to hit pan on the shade for so long. I'm like drooling over how, do you guys see how, oh my goodness gracious, those Terra Moon shades. Dang, I need to place a Terra Moon order. Anyway, the Kaleidoscope shade, I don't feel like performs nearly, like I'm like, is this actually that shade? I don't feel like this performs nearly as well as it used to. Doesn't intrigue me as much as it used to. It's like this champagne-y, greeny blue shade that I feel like I could just make work in a lot of looks, and maybe just try and either at least increase the dip on this or potentially try and hit pan. So that gives us 8 shades in this little palette. I'm actually super excited about this cute little color story. This one will be fun. I'm excited to report back my usage on this as well. All right, you guys, that is going to wrap it up for my March palette stash video. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I would love to know what palettes you plan to reach for this month. If there's any that you're gonna be focused on, let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye.